I have done many experiments and concluded that you can make a totally convincing homemade demi-glace by simply combining these store-bought ingredients in these proportions and then just boiling them for a while. That's it. I swear it works, and having a bag of demi-glace ice cubes in the house will turn your meat dishes into treasures for which you will weep when absent. And I'm not calling this faux demi-glace or ersatz demi-glace, I'm calling it demi-glace. We're just taking a very different route to that destination. Let's quickly recap what demi-glace is. No less an authority than Anthony Bourdain writes, classically, demi-glace was a reduction of equal parts reduced veal stock and sauce espagnole. No one makes sauce espagnole anymore. What most restaurants refer to as demi is simply a strong, dark, highly reduced veal stock that has been strained and reduced again with red wine and shallots. And even that last thing, Bourdain said, would be debated by some chefs. The core idea is it's a dark meat stock made with roasted bones and joints, traditionally veal bones, but this is Chef John's much less expensive cheat that combines chicken wings and beef shanks. Anyway, you simmer that stuff for literally a day, strain it out, then you gotta skim off the fat, reduce the stock until it's within striking distance of this. Glace or glaze, meat glaze. Demi-glace is halfway to being glace. Demi means half. Anyway, to make this much more efficiently out of modern, widely available industrial food products, the first thing we need is prepackaged broth or stock. The standard 1-quart carton is the core unit of my recipe here. A quart is just shy of a liter. For each carton, we'll need about 1 teaspoon of tomato paste, so into my big pot, I'm just squeezing out 6 approximate teaspoons for the 6 quarts of stock I'm going to boil down. Then I'm turning the heat on medium. There's no fat in the pan. I don't want to have to skim fat off this at the end. I'm just going to mash that around and very gently brown the tomato paste. What this step replicates is the common technique where chefs coat the veal bones in tomato paste before roasting them. It gives you some nice caramelized sugar, some brick red color, and a lot of umami. But I've found that if I let this burn in the slightest, it ruins the whole batch, so I'm very conservative. As soon as the paste stuck to the pan just starts to brown, I can see it, I can smell it, that's good enough. Deglaze with the first carton. Make sure the bottom of the pan is clean and nothing is going to burn, then in goes 5 more quarts. Use veal stock if you can find it. I think chicken is fine for this, and while broth is technically made of meat and stock is technically made from bones, I don't think it really matters which you have for our purposes here, and I'm not sure there's much of a difference with the prepackaged stuff. What's imperative is that whatever you buy is low sodium, the lowest salt content you can find, or it'll be inedibly salty by the time you reduce it, and quality matters. I tried a lot of brands before I landed on this one. It has hardly any salt and great flavor. I tried mixing some beef broth in with the chicken to better approximate veal, and it just didn't work. Most beef broth on the market in my world is somewhat artificially flavored, and it really gave the demi-glace a canned soup taste. Better to use a high-quality, very low-salt broth from the wrong animal. The next thing, believe it or not, will be soy sauce, a very small amount, just a teaspoon per quart of broth. Low-sodium soy sauce is best for this if you got it, but I don't think it's worth making a special purchase. Trust me, this will not taste like East Asian food at the end. This tiny amount of soy sauce will just supply a lot of the same flavor compounds we would get by roasting the bones for the stock. You usually roast some onions with the bones, so I'm putting in half a teaspoon of onion powder per quart of stock. You could skip that, honestly. Most prepackaged broth products have some onion in them anyway. What you cannot skip is this, gelatin. This is what you would dissolve out of the connective tissues of the veal bones. It's why joints are especially good for demi-glace. Lots of collagen in joints that break down into gelatin. 1 standard quarter-ounce packet of unflavored, unsweetened gelatin per quart of broth. Those packets are 7 grams each. Be aware that a lot of refined gelatin like this on the market is made from pig parts. If you don't eat pig, look for halal or kosher gelatin. And you generally scatter this stuff on to keep it from clumping up. We're putting in so much that it's gonna clump no matter what, but it doesn't matter. The clumps just dissolve in time, which is why I add this at the beginning of the process. Now, literally all we gotta do is boil this on high heat until it's about 1/6 of its original volume. So all 6 of those boxes are gonna be reduced to the volume of just 1. I'm gonna pinch my spoon at the original liquid level, then imagine cutting that length in half, then imagine cutting the half into thirds, and there. When the liquid comes up to about there on the spoon, we'll have 1/6 of the original volume. As it reduces, you might notice some good stuff sticking to the walls. I try to scrape that off and get it dissolved again and scrape the bottom to make sure that nothing is sticking and burning, but mostly I just let this boil largely unattended. It'll take a couple hours. Plenty of time to prepare the new pan that I'm going to use in this video, which is sponsored by Misen. And this is the new carbon steel pan from Misen. High carbon steel is basically a middle ground between stainless and cast iron. You see season it like cast iron to make a natural non-stick surface. Easy instructions there. First step is to melt off the packing wax, then you just rub on the seasoning wax that Misen kindly provides, and in it goes to season. Misen is a company that's making very solid, basic, essential cookware at shockingly low prices. Pans this cheap from other companies are never this beefy. This thing is so solid, it'll last a lifetime. And it's heavy, but not as heavy as cast iron, which is one of the virtues of carbon steel. It also heats faster and more evenly. Remove the handle there so you can easily transfer this to the oven. A phenomenal all-purpose pan. Do us both a favor, go to Misen.com/Ragusia Carbon Steel for 20% off your first order on this pan or anything. Misen.com/Ragusia Carbon Steel for 20% off your first order. Thank you, Misen. Here's our stock after an hour, reduced halfway. If you couldn't fit in all your cartons in the beginning, just wait until the first few reduce a bit and then put in the rest. Here we are after 2 hours, and yep, that's about 1/6 of our original volume, and this is done. You could keep reducing it down to a thick glaze, but it would be untenably sticky. It's just easier to package and dose out this stuff if it's still got some water in it. These are just standard ice cube trays I'm using. I'd say each cube of these will enrich enough pan sauce for one person. Freeze those solid. Unpack into freezer bags, and you're locked and loaded. Anytime you're making any kind of meat sauce or stew, you just drop in a couple cubes and let them reduce from demi-glace to glace. Let me taste that and make a mental note. That's just our prepackaged ingredients reduced, nothing else. Now, here's a couple of cubes of the demi-glace I made a while back, closer to the traditional way, with fresh animal parts that I bought from the store. Reduce that to a glaze and taste. The texture of the two is identical, because gelatin is gelatin, regardless of what you boiled it out of. The flavor is almost identical and very good in either case. That touch of soy sauce over here really does replicate that taste of roasted bones. Now let's actually do something with it. I've got a hanger steak here from Rocking Chair Ranch in Monroe County, Georgia. I've got a video about how to trim and portion this. It's in the description. A couple of little pseudo loins of hanger go into the pan. They're coated in oil, salt, and pepper. A good sear all around, and then in goes butter, and I'll just baste these on medium-low heat until pink inside. Maybe 125 Fahrenheit on a thermometer, 50 C. Out they go to rest on the board. I'll deglaze with just a little red wine. I don't bother putting wine or shallots or anything in my demi-glace because I want to keep my demi-glace versatile. It's really easy for me to add flavorings to it later. And in goes 3 cubes of my new demi-glace. Time now to just reduce this until thick. Look at how syrupy that is. That's mostly the gelatin. Heat off, bubbling stopped, and I like to finish with just a little cold butter to make an emulsion, some fresh thyme in there as well, and that is done. Slice up my hanger steak on the plate, and yeah, that sauce is just insane. The demi-glace gives it an instant hit of intense, meaty flavor, and more importantly, that indescribably luscious texture you only get from gelatin. All of this makes me wonder, what if we cut out the middleman? What if we just sprinkled some gelatin right into a pan sauce, the same way you would with starch or something, just to use it as a thickener? In this case, I've done some mushrooms with my hanger steak. Those mushrooms will provide a lot of that umami we would get from the reduced meat broth. Deglaze with red wine and a little water, and then I'll just sprinkle on my gelatin. You won't know what its final thickness is going to be until you let it cool to eating temperature. It thickens as it cools. Needs a little more gelatin for thickening. I'll stir in some whole sage leaves, and to keep the experiment pure, there's no butter at all in this pan. All of that texture is provided by the gelatin, and yeah, that is pretty damn good. It makes you wonder if demi-glace and all kinds of classic meat dishes would have evolved quite differently if refined gelatin had always been readily available. In the mirror universe where that happened, me with a goatee is probably saying,
yeah, I mean, if you're in like some kind of crazy survival situation where you can't get powdered gelatin, you could, I guess, take like 1 billion animal parts and put them in a pot and boil them for like a day. But I mean, that'd be crazy. That'd be like boiling down 50 watermelons to get a cup of sugar to bake with. Long live the empire.